Tonight's conversation we thought would be a little different. As Black men, we have conversations amongst ourselves often about what we're feeling, what we're thinking about the killing of people who look like us. So we thought this evening would be an interesting idea to bring together a group of Black men and ask them to share their thoughts, their feelings about what when things like this happen, what goes through their minds? These men are husbands, their sons, their fathers. There's somebody loving us. And so when these things happen, we all hurt, and sometimes we hurt in silence. And so tonight is about a conversation with Black men, and where we'll hear their thinking about, the killing of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, racism, and in many ways, whatever feels appropriate for them to talk about will be fair game this evening. So again, we thank you for joining us. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Flap Cockrell. I know he's been quite busy today. If he'd also offer a few opening comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKether. Good evening. As Dr. McKether said, my name is Flap Cockrell. I serve as the Vice President for Student Affairs here at the University of Toledo, as well as Vice Provost. And I think this conversation is most certainly very timely in lieu of all of the incidents that has most recently transpired in our country. We all know that we're most certainly in the midst of a pandemic, but anytime that we can get together and assemble to have conversations about how do we move the agenda forward and what can we do to support one another in this community, I think is most certainly appropriate. So I'm so happy to have all of you all here on the line. I would encourage you all, please encourage your peers and your family members to join on to listen, because I think these stories that you will hear tonight will most certainly provide some context about what people are experiencing and how they're feeling during this time. And so I hope all of you all enjoy. Please use the chat feature for the question and answer. But I'm so glad that all of you all are here. We look forward to having our students back on campus in a couple of months. Students, we most certainly have missed you all, and we can't wait to see you all in a few weeks. So thank you so much, Dr. McKether. Thank you to all the panelists who will share your stories. Again, we ask you all to please be authentic in this space and be very respectful as well, because this most certainly is an educational dialogue for us this evening. So we're asking people to most certainly practice civil discourse, but we look forward to having you this evening and engaging in dialogue. Thank you so much, Dr. McKether.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Flap. Much appreciated. So the program overview for tonight will be a welcome in which you just heard from myself and Dr. Cockrell. Overview of Brothers in the Rise, which is the co-sponsor of this evening's program. Introduction of the moderator. Then after that, we'll have some opening comments from panel members. And from there, there will be a conversation amongst the panel members. There will be a Q&A. And we'll have a discussion of campus and community resources and some closing thoughts from either Dr. Cockrell, myself, or from any panel members. Okay? So, Brothers in the Rise is an organization that started officially in 2011. However, we know that Black and Brown men have been mentoring young men at the University of Toledo and other places much before 2006. But in 2006, 2008, a number of African American and Latino faculty, staff, and graduate students began conversations about what we viewed was happening at the University of Toledo, in particularly looking at the retention and graduation rates of Black and Brown male students. Those indicators of student success were woefully inadequate and trailed behind everybody else on campus. And so the conversation became, what can we do to help these young men um, be successful and stay here at the University of Toledo? In 2011, a group of us got together, including several people on this call for sure, including David Young and several others also, said, what can we do? And we just took it upon ourselves to form Brothers in Arise, and it's a group that's intended to provide mentorship for young men on campus. Brothers in Arise differs from other organizations that it's not a peer-to-peer. it allows the opportunity for students to be mentored and matched with faculty, staff, or students at the university. I think that's different and unique from many other programs that we are aware of. So we've been doing that since 2011. A few years after 2011, we partnered with a group called Alpha Phi Boulay. And Alpha Phi Boulay is an organization of esteemed men in Toledo. And through that partnership, they began also to mentor young men and brothers on the rise. But in addition to the mentoring aspect, they began to also assist us in bringing high profile speakers to campus to provide a role model so that our young men and women could see what they could possibly become through hard work. For example, just last year, brought to campus Bill Picard, a millionaire, black millionaire. He came at no cost and provided a lecture, and will be coming back again this year. I mean, so it's through those types of community partnerships that we do the kind of work that we do. And again, this is work that we do because we're concerned and want to help ensure that our black and brown male students are successful at the University of Toledo. So that's our idea, Brothers on the Rise. And last thing I'll say about that is I can't leave without sort of mentioning my good friend, Dr. Tony Quinn, who passed away several years ago, who was also a founding member. But I think his words sort of still sort of resonate with many of us in that he said that we need to be on the right side of history. We cannot history be shown that we were here, that this happened on our watch, and we did nothing, stand on the sidelines. And so we're very proud of the work that we do through Brothers on the Rise, which is again co-hosting this evening's event. At this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Cockrell to introduce our moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKether. I'd be remiss if I did not recognize one of our trustees on the call, Burdale Jackson. Thank you so much for your unwavering support. We noticed that you've been on all of our dialogues on diversity calls or webinars, and so we just want to say thank you so much for your contributions and your support to the University of Toledo. So thank you on behalf of the University of Toledo. Before I recognize and our moderator, I do think it is very fitting that we do a moment of silence, not only for George Floyd and those other people of color who passed away, but most recently, as of Tuesday evening, one of our U Toledo athletes passed away due to gun violence. His name is Janelle Douglas. So I'm going to ask for a moment of silence at this time. Thank you so much. So our moderator for the evening is David E. Young. I'm happy to say that David works within the Division of Student Affairs, and he's most certainly been an asset to us. David E. Young serves as the Director of Toledo Excel and Special Projects. In 2018, David received some additional responsibility and was asked to lead African American initiatives for the Office of Multicultural Student Success. These responsibilities include leadership for My Brother's Keeper program, Brothers on the Rise, Talent Aspiring Women Leaders, also known as TALL, and support for the Rocket Recovery Grant. He's a recipient of several honors, which includes the Central City Ministries Urban All-American Award, U Toledo's Minority Alumni Award, and the Dr. Lancelot C.A. Thompson Service Award to students. Most recently, David was voted into the St. John's Jesuit High School Hall of Fame. As an ordained elder in the Church of God in Christ, he is a member of the ministerial staff at Toledo's New Life Kojic under Bishop Edward T. Cook, where he serves as youth pastor. He and his wife, Brenda, are the proud parents of one son, James Jelani Akil Young. Please welcome David Young.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flap and Dr. McKether, for putting together this diversity series. I think it's extremely important that at this time of such unrest in our country that we have dialogue and that we have important dialogue. And I think that this part of the series is extremely important. In 1997, Sister Erykah Badu recorded a song called Tyrone. And at the beginning of that live recording, she threw a question out there. She said, "Sisters, how y'all feeling? Brothers, are y'all all right?" In 2020, if you asked that question to the brothers, I think you would certainly see that they're not all right. There's so many things going on for us as Black men in the world and in these United States. I think it's extremely important that we have this dialogue and that we share how we're feeling. And we have an outstanding panel that I think can do just that, but not just our panel. We welcome your questions. Place your questions in the chat, and we will get to as many of those questions as we can. We purposely are going to certainly ask questions of the panel, but we want to give plenty of space for your questions as well. So let me go ahead and introduce the panel that we have for tonight. First, Damon Pryor, who is director of the University of Toledo Recreational Services, but Damon also serves as a man of faith and is an ordained minister. Jean-Paul Amage is the assistant professor of emergency medicine working over at our health science campus. Cush Baxter is a senior here at the University of Toledo and the president of Alphi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. James Townsend is a clinical counselor at the University of Toledo Counseling Center. And Justin Ingram is a University of Toledo assistant men's basketball coach and a member of our own Hall of Fame here at the University of Toledo. So we have a diverse panel that I think comes from so many different areas and so many different viewpoints. And that's why I'm so excited about this discussion. And so if the first prompt question I'm gonna throw out there to the panel, brothers, are y'all all right? And what I mean by that is just yesterday I was having a conversation with my wife and my son. We are being interviewed, my son and I are being interviewed for a film that's coming out about Black male experiences. And they're talking to fathers and to sons. And my wife said to my son, how do you feel about being a Black man in America? Because that's so much of the subject of what this film is about. And he said he's not feeling real good about it. And so she said, well, would you rather be something else? And he said, not at all. I love my Blackness, but it's difficult right now. We're experiencing some things right now. And what hit me is knowing this discussion was coming up, maybe that's how we should open this up. We have a student on the call as part of our panel, a coach at our university, faculty, we've got staff. And so I just kind of want to pose that question to each one of our panel. How are you feeling with everything that's going on? COVID-19, George Floyd, racism, social unrest. How are you feeling right now about a Black man in America? And I'm going to throw that out to Damon Pryor first.
Well, Mr. Young, first of all, just want to thank you and thank the panel for the opportunity to serve on the panel and have an opportunity to have some conversations about things that are going on in our country. So directly to your question, I'm tired. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And at the same time, I'm hopeful as well because of the things that I've seen as far as reactions. Overall, there's a sense of drain for me for so many reasons with what's going on. I'm one of those people that like to have the answer for things, but sometimes I feel like there is no answer. Sometimes I just feel like we keep hitting our head against the wall, just keep banging our head against the wall because It's the same thing. It's been, I'm 43 years old, and I feel like in my 43 years, we've been dealing with the same things as Black men in this country, where as a Black man, I feel like, and I'm going to say this just like this, I feel like that I'm treated worse than animals. And I get less respect than animals. And I don't know why. I don't know why for whatever reason, my Blackness seems to scare people. And all I ask you to do is to treat me like a human being. It's frustrating. And that's how I'm feeling.
Thank you, Devon. I appreciate that. Next, let's go to the student or the undergraduate student we have on the panel, Cushback, who is right now in Chicago, Illinois, but is joining us. Cush.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? I believe so. Okay. Just piggybacking off what Mr. Damon Pryor said. If you look at it, every generation had a unique time that they lived through. You have the slavery, you have the civil rights movement, and here in 2020, when I'm a young man, just made 22 years of age, and we're going through COVID-19. We're going through rioting, we're going through protests, police brutality, and if you look back, some of the same things are still going on, as far as police brutality and just Black people just being treated unfair, and it makes me feel it makes me pose the question, why is this still going on? Is this how the real world really is? Especially as a young man growing up, not having, or not allowing myself to have a worldly outview in a nutshell, and just staying just having faith that things will be better, and the world is not all about just injustice and police brutality. But at the same time, it's hard to deal with, especially during the age of technology. You have so many you have so many sources that you can see news. You see news every day, and most of the news is pretty negative. So you see constant COVID-19 cases. You see, um, police brutality. You see Karens, as they call it, and it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And the only reason I would say that's keeping me hopeful, is if you look at the past, and if you look at brothers and sisters who are on this call today, who are more established, of course, than I am, um, how we break barriers. We the civil rights movement. Fighting for our rights. Rights that are, to me, are God given, and bringing us together today to discuss and pose the question, how are we feeling? Those are the acts that make me feel hopeful, and when I grow up, continue this from generation to generation. So but it's hard. It's hard because you get to talk. I'm sorry, I'm talking so long, but you get to talk that you have to work twice as hard because you're African American male. You know, you sometimes feel that you have to cut your hair to look apart. Um, your unique attributes. Sometimes, you feel like you have to talk a certain way around those who are, who are, I would say, privileged, just based off their skin. And it's really hard that the Black Lives Matter movement is going on, and people are, some people are accepting to it, and some people are looking at it as a political statement, when it's really just, people who are born this way, just trying to fight for rights that we're born for, that we're born with, and just have the same opportunities as our peers, and try to have an outlook that, although we may look different, it's only one race, which is the human race. So that's I know that was a lot, but that's just kind of how my mind been, and I want to thank you all for coming today.
No, Kush, I really appreciate your thoughts. It's so important that we hear from our students and hear your hearts. Dr. Amajay, your faculty here and your faculty over at the Health Science Campus, same question. How are you feeling as a Black man right now? Dr. Amajay.
I'm sorry, guys, I was muted there. Everybody can hear me now? Yeah. I would just like to start by thanking you guys for inviting me. Quite frankly, this is healing process. Just having an opportunity to just, air this out and talk about this is big for me. Just to answer your question, man, this is sad that I'm gonna. So here's the thing. I mean, I have a different background. I came to the United States when I was 11. My parents are from a French colony in Africa. My whole family, my mom's side of the family moved to France way back in the day. So I have family in France, Africa, and here. So I moved here. I moved to Michigan. I grew up in Ypsilanti. I went to undergrad in Detroit, Wayne State. Came here for med school, and here I am. So now, I feel like I'm in a field where I serve people, right? And I have to be at my best when I'm not angry or sad, right? At the same time, I'm the clerkship director for medical students, so I'm mentoring people. To directly answer your question, what really kills me, and then just listening to the gentleman that spoke earlier, is just, it breaks my heart, because what makes me angry and sad is this. So, we've been battling, everybody at some level, I mean, I went through a bunch of series of unfairness. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it now, but, we thought that, yeah, we grinded it out, we beat the system, we had to do what we had to do so that, hopefully my son, I have a 3-year-old son, and I have a 13-year-old niece, thinking that maybe by the time they get to where I am, things will get better, man. And it kills me that that's not the case. It's probably worse for them, And we talking basic human right. And as I look around, I'm a person naturally that I'm always looking for, where's the solution, the peaceful protest is warranted and necessary, but the conversation has to change at one point. We have to get to a point where we are demanding some sort of economical influence. We have to know who's who in the community, because we have to come together. So I mean, I think this platform, I'm personally thankful for this platform. I won't take too much of your time, but just talk about how I feel. Those are the two words, just frustrated, angry, sad,
Thank you so much for that perspective. This next young man I saw come on campus, and so I saw kind of the evolution into the Black man he is now. Saw him come on campus and was assigned to him as a mentee when he came here to play basketball at the university. I've seen him grow into his manhood, become a wonderful father, a wonderful husband, and now is one of our assistant coaches here working with our student athletes. So same question for Brother Justin Ingram. How are you feeling about being a Black man right now?
How's everybody doing today? I'm Justin Ingram. Like like Brother David said, I've known him a long time. I really appreciate you guys having me on the call and have an opportunity to speak with everybody and listen to what everybody has to say and have a dialogue about what's going on in our country and in our world. Um, how I'm feeling, I got a multitude of emotions, to be honest. Sometimes I'm sad, I'm worried, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm tired. You know, I think about myself and my friends. Like when I'm not able to see them a lot now, but when I do, I'm telling them, be safe. But I'm telling them be safe. Because we're going through a pandemic and everything. But at the same time, be safe because I mean, black men aren't coming home every day now. Things are happening, and you leave and you don't always come back. you know uh, my job and my life, i'm I'm predominantly around young African American men. With our basketball team, majority of our basketball team are young African American men. So I find myself worrying about them when they're at home. Watch how you are. Be careful, be safe out there. So I'm worried for them. And the biggest thing, I'm scared for. I've got two young boys. I got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I'm scared for the world that they're growing up in. I have to have conversations with them that my dad had with me probably at 13, 14, 15 years old. I'm probably about to have a conversation with my oldest at 9 or 10 years old. I shouldn't be having these type of conversations. And he's a kid. And I try to you know keep him as innocent as possible for as long as I can. He's asking me, Dad, are police bad? And I have to tell him the truth. No, they're not. But he doesn't understand that some police are. And that's not a conversation you should have to have with a 6-year-old. So I'm scared for my two young ones. Honestly, and I think about it a lot. Ever since the death of George Floyd. That's probably the main thing that I think about the most is I'm raising two black boys, in a world where everybody thinks that they're beautiful. Everybody thinks they're the most beautiful kids in the world. When do they stop being cute and start being a threat? When does that happen? And that's how I feel. Like I'm scared. I'm scared for my sons.
Thank you so much, Justin. Your role as a young father and also in shaping these young men on our basketball team is critically important. And so I think your viewpoint is so important to us. And finally, our last panelist um, is a clinician by trade and talks to our students every day about their mental health. And so I think it's perfect that he kind of close out this first session. Um, and Brother James Townsend, if you could kind of tell us how you're feeling being a black man in this country right now.
Thank you, David. First, I want to say I'm humbled and honored to be a part of the panel and to take part in this kind of dialogue. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. Feeling kind of on edge and a little hopeful. I'm frustrated because we're going through a global pandemic and we have zero leadership or inept leadership at best from the highest levels of our government to try to slow this thing down and keep us all safe so that we can move forward. And we're opening things back up and cases are rising and rising. And I don't know if we're going to be safe coming back to campus or not. So I'm frustrated with that aspect. I'm angry because, as Demond referenced, I mean, we're still fighting for, fighting the same injustices that we've been fighting since the 60s, and we're still fighting that we're still being treated as less than. People talk about all the progress we've made, but really, how much progress have we made in that area? And I'm feeling on edge because you never know what's going to happen when you go outside. The guy from Indiana over the 4th of July weekend, just going to have a good time and gets hemmed up against a tree by a group of people, white people, talking about get a noose. people getting hung in other parts of America. It seems like since the Black Lives Matter movement has started, it's almost amped it up another level with the things that people are doing to African Americans, you know, in our country. So it has me kind of feeling on edge. You know, even the incident that happened the other night, you know, with our football player, you know, it's on edge, you know, and like, okay, what's going to happen the next time somebody goes outside? What's going to happen next time someone gets pulled over by the police? You know, what's going to happen next time somebody makes a wrong turn in a certain neighborhood or jogging down the street? You know, so it has me feeling kind of on edge. As far as being hopeful, the reaction from the younger generation during the Black Lives Matter movement has me kind of hopeful because you saw a lot of young people out there, not just African Americans, a lot of people from other races and backgrounds, as well as some of the reaction from around the world. You know, you see other countries and you see massive demonstrations about what's going on, the injustices that are going on here in America. So that has me kind of hopeful. But yo, yeah, that's how I'm feeling. A little frustrated, a little angry, a little on edge, and a little hopeful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James. A couple of you mentioned in your comments and said those three words, Black Lives Matter. Right now, corporate America is saying that Black Lives Matter, the NFL and the NBA, and everyone is saying Black Lives Matter. It's up on billboards in front of hotels. But not even a year ago, if you post that on your Facebook page, if you put that on your social media and you said Black Lives Matter, you were hit with a little bit of controversy. People thought maybe you were being a little bit radical when you said Black Lives Matter. So many people would then say, no, all lives matter. And there were debates about it on television, that phrase itself. And so everybody in the panel doesn't have to comment, but just let me hear a couple of you because we certainly want to get to any questions that we get in our chat. But let me hear from a couple of you about what's changed from your viewpoint. Why do you see Black Lives Matter now so much in the forefront when 6 months ago, 7 months ago, you said Black Lives Matter and it was a little bit of a different vibration that was out there. So just a few of our panelists comment on that. And then again, please put your own questions in the chat, either for individuals on the panel or for others as well. And any panelists can feel free to.
I'll jump out there, Ms. Young, and just when you say what's changed, I firmly believe when people saw the murder, and I think it's important to say that the murder that was on video recorded, Facebook Live, we saw it live, that changed a whole perspective from people, from this notion of, I believe a lot of times people were hearing black people say, this is how we're treated. We're treated less than. We're treated like you don't want us here. We don't get the respect. We don't get the acknowledgement, so on and so forth. And when people actually saw that on television, it changed their perspective. Then you saw people want to say Black lives do matter. And I get it. I understand. I know now why Colin Kaepernick was kneeling and he was saying enough is enough. And we all have to be treated fairly. And so from that perspective, you know, the perspective of everybody's eyes being open, it changed a great deal of things within our country. Now, I will say this, to your point, Mr. Young, there are still some, and some at the highest level of leadership within our country, that have noted Black Lives Matter as a hate group. Folks still don't get it. They still don't understand that the lives that matter, when people say all lives matter, and I think this is important to bring up, all lives do matter, but Black lives matter as part of all lives, okay? Because Black lives are part of the all lives that you're referring to. And this becomes too political in nature and not enough from the standpoint of we're talking about human dignity and human respect, human rights, and how individuals are treated. I should not have to go to you and beg for you to be a part of a society. Shouldn't have to. But for some reason, whatever that reason is, for all of these years, I've had to come and I've had to beg. And when I say I mean people who look like me, and that shouldn't be. So again, to your question, I do think people are woke, but some folks are still asleep. Some folks still don't get it. Some folks still do not understand why Colin Kaepernick was kneeling. And that's still troubling. But I'm gonna say this as I end this comment. It's not surprising. And I do have to go back to George's killing. I have to go back to Breonna Taylor's killing. I have to go back to Brother Aubrey's killing. Let's be clear with this. These are nothing, none of this is new. It's been happening for over 400 or so years, folks. We just now have videos on our cameras and folks can now see it, right? So when are we gonna stop talking and change the narrative? That's my big thing, because we do a hell of a lot of talking in this world, but it's about the action. And I think when I said earlier, and I got to say this, and I'll shut up and move on, but that's why I'm tired. I'm tired of folks talking. I'm tired of hearing, I'm tired of the fact that we have to come and have these dialogue series. It's great to have the conversation, but we got to move the needle at some point, right? And it can't be us. It's got to be our white counterparts that want to help and be a part of it. So let's be real in that perspective too. So again, to your point, that's why the Black Lives Matter has taken off. Folks saw it for real. It was murdered on television. So that changed a whole different perspective for people.
Thank you. Thank you, Damon. And I think that really sums it up very well. We had a question I see here in the chat from Michael Williams. It says, one of the biggest topics to bring up is Black on Black crime. Truth of the matter is that life in certain communities is a systematic issue that has been woven into our country's history. What are the physical actions that we can do to break these cycles? And can we do it without the government's help? First of all, with that term, Black on Black crime, that term itself is very problematic in that the term is a myth. Black on Black crime as a term is a myth. People kill who they're around. Any criminologist will tell you that, any sociologist will tell you that. People kill who they're around, they harm who they're around. And so that's what that crime is. I've never heard anybody say Asian on Asian crime, even though folks in the Asian community tend to kill other folks in the Asian community, tend to rob other folks in the Asian community. I've never heard anybody say white on white crime. When people were watching The Sopranos and it was a big thing, and people watched the Godfather film, I never heard anybody say Italian on Italian crime. They were inflicting crime on the folks they were around. And so the term itself is problematic, and we need to stop using Black on Black crime. Yes, it's an issue. Yes, it is a tragedy that our people are killing each other at the same time we're fighting for justice. But there is nothing unique about people of the same race killing other people, committing crime against other people of the same race. So that's a bit of mythology we probably need to get rid of. And now, what are the actions that we can do to break these cycles? Anybody on the panel kind of want to address that? What are some things that we can do to break these cycles? And then I think another key part of the question is, can we do it without the government's help?
I would like to say something. I believe one thing that we can do as a people is remind ourselves of our history. So I notice a lot around American history. You know, you have museums, Black History museums, and you know, some museums start off with slavery, or they really put a big emphasis on how we went through slavery. And um, that's good because that should never be forgotten. Like slavery was horrific, as my mother describes it. But I think one thing that helped me get a good sense of what I'm capable of, as a black man, is she also educated me on the glory, that we came from, and that although we celebrate 1619 Juneteenth, we go way further than that, to when we were living in the lands of Africa, when we were the first ones to create plumbing systems. We were the first engineers, first dentists. Black men performed the first open heart surgery. Um, Timbuktu College, So we're not education is not new to us. I'm not gonna say we invented it, but we discovered it. And we enhanced it, and it took on its own life as it is. So I believe knowing that as a black man really helps you get a sense of what you're capable of, instead of just we started on the shores of slavery. Our names was took from us, our culture was took from us. We were robbed of our God. But knowing that even everything we have here in America started off on the backs of slavery, but those inventions came from the lands of Egypt, and learning about my name, Cush, the son of Ham and grandson of Noah, Cush in Africa. My middle name Zaire, the original name of the Dominican Republic of Congo. My name has power, but if you research my name in today's generation, that's not the first thing that comes up. You're not going to hear about my name in the Bible. So I believe we putting a big emphasis on our brilliance, and not just our resilience, but our brilliance as well. I think that would really help communities and black women and men.
Thank you, Kush. I think that was very, very powerful. Um, I see another question here in the chat for one of our other panelists to kind of respond to. My fear is that society's definition of racial oppression will wind up being this month's flavor. What are your ideas for how we sustain the attention and energy needed to make real, deep, and lasting change? We don't want this movement, these protests, to be a fad. How do we go about sustaining that attention and energy needed to make this systematic change?
Okay, David, let me go ahead and I'll try to answer the last question you asked, but let me just chip in on the previous question and the comment that the question you asked earlier. So
Sure.
I agree with you 100%. Quite frankly, it pisses me off when somebody tell me the statistic of how many black people kill, black on black crime. That is irrelevant. Okay, so it's like the question that the person asked previously to, okay, how do we do to stop that? It's you're asking me to give you a solution of a problem that does not exist. Okay, it's not like you said, if you live in a certain area, you're not going to travel to a place else to do something else. So that is not a problem we have. I can't and I agree with you 100%. And to also just chip in really quickly on it's nothing new. Why is it that everybody is on it now? I think just like the last panelist said, is the first time that the naysayer saw it live. This is unarmed, not provoking anybody, flat out just basic human right was taken away from them. For me, this is my second time seeing that. Okay, I've lived in a couple different countries, and This issue was, a problem in France. And I typed in a comment, somebody's name, a month, and a year. What happened to George Floyd happened in Paris, July 2016, to a gentleman, Adama Traore. July, it was like the Great Awakening. It was all over. It's essentially identical death. This guy was suffocated. So these are the things that really really get to me. And when we're talking about, okay, well, black people killing each other, it's irrelevant. It's beside the point. That's not a problem we have. And somebody's asking what's the solution. I mean, we can't start talking about it. That would take away from the real problem. The last question that you have, I don't know if David, if you want to just, what was the question that I was actually supposed to answer, and then I got kicked by the last comment was what really? Here's it for sure.
How do we not make what is going on right now, the protests that are happening in this country, how do we make sure that it doesn't become a fad or something at the moment, but how do we sustain it?
Sure. So, I think in my opening remark, I was saying that, the protest, they're warranted and they're justifiable. It's, damn sure necessary. But over time, that's not going to be sustainable, right? I mean, it's, if we really, want to be heard, I mean, we ought to start doing some things that, is really going to really get people attention. If somebody say, okay, well, what can I tell my son? I mean, how careful can you be? I mean, that's not going to be, I mean, if people are dying for breathing, So I feel like we need to all start looking at, some things. What do? We have to be able to sort of kind of drive sort of economical consequence. Um, we have to have some sort of influence in the legal world. And how does that happen? I feel like you know you know community got to get stronger. We got to unify. You got to become one. We have to have presence, we have to have influence. And again, I was saying that all of us were striving to become something, and have black people present and change these things. But it just seems like it's taking forever, and there's no progress being made, and it's getting worse. So really, the simple answer is, I think we ought to start doing maybe it's not very practical here in Toledo, but once upon a time, I'll be honest with you, everybody that I train with, we all either train in Michigan and Ohio. I will tell you that 99% of them all moved to Atlanta. And in the last few weeks, I start thinking, is that the answer? Well, I hear from John and Jamal that, hey man, we can all just say we boycott in this place. No black person is going to go eat here, and it's enough of us. Hey, there's a lot of black people in power in Atlanta, so I mean, I'm just brainstorming, but the idea is we have to start to sort of kind of influence some sort of economical shift and legal representation.
David, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say,
Go ahead, Justin.
no, yeah, I was just saying, like, even you were saying, what do we need to do to make change and whatnot. Even before there was technically a name like Black Lives Matter, like black people have been fighting to let people know that we do matter for years and years to come, and we're going to continue to fight for that, years and years to come. And it's not so much what do we have to continue to do, because we're going to continue to fight. It's people that don't look like us have to step up and start to take accountability. And what they are starting to do that now, but they have to continue. It's nice riding through the neighborhood and seeing signs in the neighborhood and stuff like that, all right, but let's not let it be just a fad. Like, you have to make a change. You have to make a change within yourself, and then the next person to see that you're making a change, and then it's a ripple effect. And it's hard for people that don't look like us to make that change, because it's easy to do it's easy to do something that's comfortable. It's hard to do something that's uncomfortable. And I'm not a very political person at all, but when the highest person in our government is making it so easy and outright to be racist, it's making it easy for other people to do that as well, because you're making it acceptable. And if you're making it acceptable to be like that, why would I do something that's uncomfortable to try and help make a change when the highest person is saying, you know what, it's all right to act like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard a couple of our panelists talk about voting and the importance of voting. We were discussing some of these issues over the last couple of weeks with my Toledo Excel leadership class. And one of the things that we talked about is how exciting that this generation is really out there protesting. But it goes beyond just a protest, and there really is a line of things that we have to get accomplished through protest. And I think it addresses the question. We have to protest. That protest then has to lead to reform. It has to lead to legislation. And we've got to vote. We've got to vote. So protest, reform, legislation, voting, economic impact is also key. And I saw that someone had placed that in the chat. If we're not impacting the economy, then we're not really doing our job to get anything out of these protests. So protest, reform, whether that's police reform, reform any other kind of systems that need to be reformed, legislation needs to happen to get some things on the books. And then it's critical that we vote. We've talked about the highest office in the land, and certainly sometimes it seems like we have some folks going by the white nationalist playbook. But more than just the office that is the highest, we've got to vote down ballot. We've got to vote for senators. We've got to vote for representatives. We have to vote for our local government. Who are these judges that our young men and women are standing in front of? So all of that is critical, critical, critical as we move on. So let me shift real quickly to a specific question for someone on the panel, and I'm going to kind of throw these out. What we saw with these protests is that this generation really stood up and moved out in protest. So a question for our student panelist, Cush Baxter. What do you think energized your generation to really move forward? Because it was your generation, the generation under you, that was out there, even in a global pandemic, protesting. What did you see happening? What was the energy of your age group that got you guys out there in the street?
I would say the power of social media and the power of technology. It's like y'all said before, what really energized the Black Lives Matter movement. Before it was always about stories after. So you have Tamir Rice, and you have Trayvon Martin, and you hear about it, but it's after the incident happened, right? And then there's been prominent people that's been speaking out about this, and I really got to give a big shout out to Colin Kaepernick for bringing it to light, even though the stories had was reported that when it was reported it already happened, but bringing it to a stage like that, where it's like people people are like, what, like, people, how can I say this? Okay, so people are like seeing that, and they're like, okay, we hear these stories, but why are you doing it on such a big stage? And it's nothing new to the Black community. Like, we have our talks about being stopped by the police and whatnot, and then I feel like revolutionized, what elevated that is seeing that on live. You know, seeing a man get his life taken on live camera. Like, you can't ignore that. It's one thing to report news after it happened, but it's another thing when you're seeing it, when you're watching it, when you see the video and you see a man getting his life taken. You know, that's traumatizing. You know, on a technological level, anybody can, and we're talking about the many sources that we have today in 2020 regarding news, and you know, seeing that, you know, that's traumatizing. You can't ignore that. You know, as a corporate can't ignore that. You know, the NFL can't ignore that. But before, when the news, when it was reported after the situations happened, they're like, you know, we're gonna ignore that. But seeing a man get his life taken on live camera, you know, that's very traumatizing. You can't ignore that. And then from there on, you have Ahmaud Arbery. You see videos of him actually getting chased down, you know, just for running. So I would say that the power of social media is what Energize does to, you know, fight for what is right, because we're already born with a sense of what's right and wrong. And now that that's out there, you know, we can't be ignored. You know, people who don't look like us, who've seen a black brother of ours get his life taken for cooperating, you know, and we know the black community know that's nothing new, but people who don't look like us actually seeing that, now it's like, oh, you guys been right the whole time. Oh, this is what, this Kaepernick is what you kneel for. Oh, now we're gonna listen to you. Now we're gonna, you know, now we're gonna hire you. Now we're gonna give you a chance. But before then, you know, it was all about stories after, and yeah, that's what I think that energized my generation.
Okay, thank you, Kush. I appreciate that. I want to go over to the chat. We have a question. Are there any initiatives in place to encourage UT students to vote this year? Classes canceled, shuttles to the polls, etc. And I'm going to invite Dr. Cockrell if you kind of want to address any of that. Maybe some things that you have heard that students are doing, and then any of the other panelists want to address that as well.
Sure, thank you, David. I appreciate it. And so a number of us has been in conversations with some of our student leaders about what can they do in the fall semester to maybe get people to the polls, what have you. I know our provost is also on the line, so Dr. B. Yorkman, thank you so much for participating in this session as well. But some of our student organizations are now talking about maybe renting vans and making sure that their peers are going to the polls. Some of them have also mentioned about the possibility of having some voter registration drives at the beginning of the school year, because they want to encourage people to vote where they live. So we know a lot of times students go back home to their respective counties to vote, but they're going to be asking students to vote within the Lucas County precinct. And so I do have a group of students that I meet with on a monthly basis. It's my student advisory committee. A few weeks ago, Dr. McKether, David Young, myself, and some others advisors, we met with a group of Black and Brown student leaders, and these are some of the initiatives that are coming out of this group. And so for our students who are on the line, you probably will see some additional information as we gain closer to the fall semester. Because these students most certainly want to mobilize their efforts in making sure that our students get to the polls. There's no talk right now about canceling classes on election day, because again, we are part of the academic enterprise, and you know, your number one priority for being at the university is to get an education. And so there's most certainly a conversation I will need to have with the provost, but we most certainly will be providing some resources for our students to make sure that we are mobilizing efforts around voting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flapp. Anybody else on the panel have any information on any efforts that are being made, particularly with the University of Toledo campus community?
So, yeah, I have the great honor to serve as the advisor for the Student African American Brotherhood, SAB for short. And these young men have put in programs where they're doing some education, trying to educate the university students on, you know, the voting processes, how to go and look at the candidates, do some research and find out more about them. So you'll see a great deal of that. I also serve as the advisor to student government, and our student government is also working to encourage students to get to the polls, educate them on the voting process. But actually, in the past, and you know, we probably will talk about this as well, have done things where we council or taken student government to the city council to meet with different representatives from the council to understand how that process works from a voting perspective. So, so those are some of the things that some of the student groups do on campus.
Okay, thank you so much. And it is critically important that students organize and vote in this type of atmosphere. Another call that not a call, but another question I see here in the chat. Can we fix a police system when its origins are unjust in the first place? Anybody on the panel want to address that?
I'll jump in, David. I think that's where the voting really comes in. People have been willing to listen in the past, and I'm talking about people who don't look like us have been willing to listen in the past, but has there been any action? Like Damon said, when is there going to be some action? We have to go vote. I mean, this thing is systematic from police chiefs to their unions. If we don't change the union, we don't change the police chiefs to get legislation in there to say, you know what, if you don't have your body camera on every time you make a stop, then that's going to be a strike against you, or you're going to be in jeopardy of losing your job. We need to get out and vote, and we need to get people in there who are going to be fair. We need to look at the kind of training they're doing. And you heard a lot about training for police officers, but I heard one person say, don't do these things when they stop white people. So they know how not to be very aggressive, but they don't use that training when they stop people of color a lot of times. So they have the training. I think it's just systematic because they know, you know, the people above us, they got our back. We're only going to get a slap on the wrist if anything. So we need to vote, and we need to get different leadership in there. We talking about the unions, and we talking about the police chiefs. If they don't want to change and make policy where they're going to hold their people accountable, then they need to be voted out. And I think, you know, again, we need to vote, and I think we're going to have to change it from a union perspective and a leadership perspective as far as the police force, because they have the training. We see it all the time. White people are pulling weapons on police and don't get shot. You know, we don't have any weapons and we getting shot in the back. You know, so they know the training. They know how not to be that aggressive. They just don't use it when it comes to people of color. So I think we need to vote, and we need to try to get change in unions and leadership.
And I just wanted to add on Mr. Townsend's point. I just recently, my name is Antonio Allen. I just recently resigned as a federal agent, and I'm here at UT now. And he's absolutely right. So I remember just going through training, and we were going to breach a door, and we had, you know, a guy that's going to be pretty much acting, but we didn't know he was there. And we went to breach the door. We said, open the door. And as we were about to breach, one of the actors opened the door, and one of my classmates just shot him. And so the instructor stopped him right there and was just like, why did you do that? And he was just like, I just seen a 6'6" black guy, man. I didn't know what to do. I'm from Boston. And so that kind of scenario right there just made you think, like, I mean, like, you know, you got these folks who are federal agents that, you know, still are in position of power and really not getting the proper training. And the instructor stopped right there and just really just had that intentional conversation with my classmate. And then I even pulled him to the side because one of the reasons I wanted to become an agent was, you know, I remember homecoming. I was just sitting in a car and got pulled over, and they were wanting to search the car and everything like that. And they couldn't even search the car because there was no reason for them to search the car. And being an agent, I realized, like, you know, they couldn't do that. You know what I mean? So it's just like educating myself. I wanted to kind of be a part of some kind of solution and being, in law enforcement. I wanted to see what really happens behind the scenes. And I really felt like I got a clear picture of what goes on behind the scenes, and folks are just not trained properly, and they need to continue to get trained, not just trained for 8 months, but then continuously, being retrained. So I just wanted to add to that point because it kind of made me think about that scenario, how my classmate just shot him just for standing at the door. And it was just like, if that was real, we were really breaching a home, he would have just shot him right there on site. So that just made me think about that situation.
Thank you. Let's get back over to the chat. And again, if you have questions or comments, just place them over here in the chat. And this is a question that's very specific to the University of Toledo. What should we expect from allies? What should we expect from our University of Toledo allies? And it's so important that when we're talking about allies, allies are not just posting something on their Facebook or making a comment, but allies and being an ally is about action. It's about impact. It's about making change. And so that I'm going to throw that out to the panel. What are some things that we should expect from our University of Toledo allies, faculty, staff, administration?
I think you hit a home run right there in teeing us up with this question. It can't just be about putting something on a Facebook and or a post. It can't be about something that you have posted on your door and or sending an email saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm here to support you. That's wonderful, but the actionable steps are important. And those actionable steps are things such as being intentional in making sure there's equality across the board at the university, and making sure equality looks like it's equal for everyone. So being intentional in that nature, making sure when we're in spaces where we have conversations, that the conversations are engaging for everyone and not singling out individuals and making individuals feel like they're the only person that can answer a question related to something that is connected with a person who's Black. Okay, so being a support system is making sure you stand up when a person says something that is inappropriate, and I'm going to use this word, it's ignorant, an ignorant comment, and you don't say, well, I don't think that this is the right place for me to address that comment. Yes, it's always the right time to address ignorance. Okay, so standing up and addressing it and making it known to the individuals in the room that we at the University of Toledo do not stand for anything that is less than respectful, diverse in nature, inclusive in nature, as well as equality in nature. So making sure that individuals understand that. In the classroom, from a faculty member's perspective, I would say, making your students feel that this classroom is a safe space for everyone. It's a brave space for everyone in the classroom. And when you're in this classroom, you are a part of the University of Toledo's family, not isolated because of your color, not isolated because of your gender, not isolated because of anything else. You're here, and you're here as a part of our Toledo family. I think those are a lot of things that can be done. As you said, Mr. Young, it's not about, I appreciate the email. I'll say that. I appreciate the email. I appreciate the acknowledgement that you're here and you're here to support me. But I grew up in a world and around a set of folks that say, action speaks louder than word. You can make your mouth say anything. You can fix your mouth to say anything. You can fix your hand to write anything. We have some very talented writers at this university that make things sound so beautiful when they write it. That don't mean nothing. It means nothing. It means nothing. I need to see you actually do it. So those things that you do when you're around and we're having these conversations. And here's the other thing, when we have conversations, be your authentic self. I think that's important because that helps to open up the dialogue. That's one thing that we need to make sure that we do more. We need to make sure that we open up the dialogue. And while I have the opportunity, I want to jump back to a question. Some of the things that we can do, and I'm real big on this, economic empowerment is crucial in our community. Blacks have been economically oppressed for so long. So in order to change that perspective, we need to help educate ourselves on financial literacy. Learning how we invest in ourselves financially is so important, right? Malcolm X said this, and I've been saying this ever since I was in high school. This is where I learned it. Malcolm said, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. So as an African American or as a Black man and a Black woman in this country, we need to educate ourselves about our economic freedom and investing within our own communities. Now, I didn't say that we shouldn't go out and buy outside of the Black community, but what I am saying is we need to invest in our own communities, which also help to advance ourselves, right? And we can educate ourselves on economic freedom in so many different ways. And I'll say this too, once you have a seat at the table, this helps to change the perspective too, ladies and gentlemen. Once you have a seat at the table, it's not about getting a seat at the table. It's about what you're doing once you're sitting at the table, all right? Titles mean nothing if you're not impacting the community that you're serving. Let us remember that. So if we want freedom and we want to see change and we want to see the protest move from a different level, those are things that are important. So I just wanted to drop that nugget.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave.
I see. Go right ahead, Kevin.
So Damon just said, I think that we're continuing to talk about allyship and the importance of that. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to say, well, there is no express process that is excluding people, but we aren't spending enough time asking ourselves, why aren't people included? How do I get more people that feel excluded included? And so to me, one of the key components of a good ally is someone who, when they are going into an educational space and everyone looks the same, they're asking themselves, why aren't there more people of color in this room, in this space? I think that when you look at all of us on this call, have folks that we align with, people that we mentor, right? And there's no process to exclude those relationships, but have we been purposeful enough to really think about, how do I mentor someone that looks like me? How do I build that relationship? Because when you really think about it, there's so much access that happens as a result of those relationships. And we need more Black and brown students to get access to education, mentorship, and opportunities. So in my mind, one of the things that I'm looking for University of Toledo allies is challenge the status quo, speak up when they see something, but to individually find folks to mentor and bring along. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that is critically important. It's not just about us, but what actions are allies taking in, and who are they bringing along, other than just statement making. One other comment that I saw in the chat about allyship: watch your microaggressions, and when called out on them, don't go immediately to defending yourself. Listen, reflect, learn, and do better. It's our University of Toledo. And I think that's important to note. Another question, because I've seen a really interesting thing happening that I've rarely seen happen before, and it is that some of our student athletes have been using their power to speak out on issues. We've seen pro athletes do it in the past, but we had players at Clemson and Texas and Oklahoma State speaking out about racism. Sometimes it was the coaching staff, sometimes it was the institution. The young player at Ole Miss talked about the Confederate flag, and it ended up coming down. A lot of that discussion happened after a player said, I'm not going to have anything else to do with Ole Miss with this flying above my head. And so, Justin, if you could kind of talk about student athletes and the role that you see them playing as part of this, and kind of using their voice and their power.
A lot of times, student athletes are, some of the most popular people on the campus. You the star running back, the star quarterback, the star point guard, these people, especially at these larger universities. It's similar to Colin Kaepernick or LeBron James and whatnot. If these guys and young ladies that are in a position of somewhat power, decide that they don't want to do something because they feel a certain way about something, the university or the professional sports team or the business that they're associated with, they're going to listen. If I know it's not a student athlete, but if LeBron James was to come out and say, "All right, I feel oppressed and I don't think this is right. I'm not going to play in this bubble that's down in Orlando," the NBA is going to listen. The young man at Ole Miss and I believe was it Texas? I can't remember the football player. Like they were saying, if these things aren't going to change, I don't want to have anything to do with your university or with your state, what's going on. So it's people that are within power, and not necessarily power, but these young men and women that are held to a higher standard than some other people. They feel like they're able to make change with their platform, and they're coming out and saying things, and they're able to make that change, and I think it's good, because they're using their platform to bring awareness to something that should have been uh, made aware a long time ago. So they're using their position of power to try and make change.
If I could piggyback off that for
Sure, absolutely, James.
um, athletes, not only college athletes and professional athletes, but I think high school athletes are going to start to exercise some of the power that they have. If you know the story of McCord Maker, 5-star player coming out of high school, turned down schools like UCLA, Memphis, and Kentucky, and committed to Howard University, committed to an HBCU. First time in I think over 40 years, a 5-star recruit committed to an HBCU. And he said, I want to start a movement because I went to a visit and the culture and what was going on, and so many educated African American people with so much energy. It just, it touched him. And he said, I want to try to start a movement to have other great basketball players coming to high school thinking about going to HBCU. So I think that move with him committing to an HBCU may start a movement in itself.
I agree. I agree. And these young men, these young women on these campuses do have the spotlight on them, as Justin said. And that spotlight and even the economic power gives them a certain amount of power. I see something else over here in the chat. James, when you started talking about Howard University, you got John Jones excited about HBCUs. But John also talked about allyship. And is there a definition of what allyship is? That's a key component. There has to be a shared language about what allyship is. Dr. McKether, I'm going to invite you to kind of maybe hit that a little bit. You with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, that's your baby. You lead that up. Is there a definition for allyship that exists or something that may be being worked on? So we do have that common language at this institution.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. So actually, when that question was first raised, my question in my head was, well, what do we mean by allyship? And so I've not seen anything in my world where there's a definition of allyship, but let's build on it. But let's maybe build one now. You know, in my mind, I think about allyship, and maybe this is specific to this word, but maybe not. I just think of an ally as being someone who supports your cause. And that's a very broad definition, but someone who supports your cause, I'm going to add unconditionally. And so that's a definition that I would start with. And, so invite others to add to that or take away from it. But in my mind, if you're my ally, you support my cause and you do it unconditionally.
I think that that is an important definition. And so allyship is supporting cause, and I think we need to have some measurable ways that we determine whether that cause has been supported. We have about 6-7 minutes left on the WebEx. I think it has been an outstanding conversation. I want to make sure that if you have a question, that you place it there in the chat, and we can certainly address that. But while we're doing that, I want to go back to Dr. Amaje. You're in the classroom every day, and you're going to be in the classroom this fall. And I heard a student say that one of the things that they're most concerned about, or that they're going to be most attentive to, is what is my professor going to be saying when I come back in the fall? What are students on campus going to be saying when I'm sitting next to them in class? Do they realize that they're in the middle of a revolution? So what are some of your expectations, Dr. Amaje, about maybe some changes that you're going to see in the classroom, or some conversations that you're going to hear in the classroom that maybe you didn't hear before? Is Dr. Amaje still with us, or maybe muted?
Oh boy, I keep doing that. Sorry, guys. So yeah, I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm just gonna make a little bit of a modification here. So I don't have the traditional classroom. I'm not a. I teach medical students on clinical sites in the ER. So when I give a lecture, I will be in the sim center with mannequins or something like that. But I'm teaching students on site in the ER. So is your question regarding the racial atmosphere, or are we talking more of the COVID? Because I'm already dealing with that. Students coming back. We're actually running a study right now on, students' stress level post-COVID, as they, we're introducing them back to the clinical environment. Because quite frankly, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I work, I'm in the ER, and it's not like, we are reintroducing students to a world where we said, okay, well, we're going to make sure that you're not exposed to a COVID patient. We can't do that, because, I'm in the ER, I go see somebody, they give me a complaint that is not COVID related. And then I send a student in there next, hey, to do a physical exam. And the person go, oh yeah, I forgot to tell the doctor that, oh, I was in New York and my, my sister had COVID. So that is traumatizing for medical students. So, if it's your question, sort of kind of leading to what we're dealing with as far as the COVID, that's that. But as far as the, racial atmosphere, I'm the only Black EM doctor over at UT and Toledo Hospital, for that matter. And I stayed here to try to accomplish something. I'll be honest with you. When I was here as a medical student, I was a recruitment coordinator of SNMA, which is a minority in medicine. So I travel with our administration to all the HBCU. We go to Morehouse, Spelman. I joined to be able to motivate the administration and sit at the table, trying to retain more people like us, here. And historically, I mean, till today, I'm the only Black male that have graduated from our emergency medicine residency program. The history of it, there's a lot of conversation that needed to be had. So as far as that goes, the racial atmosphere, I just did orientation on Monday, and I feel like, student, hesitate, especially if they, when they work with me the first time, they're trying to fill me out, oh, is this a guy that is pro this or pro that? And I'll just go back to what one of those panelists was saying before. This starts from accountability. You have to be, you have to be a certain person. You have to lead by example. You can't not be this person today and this person tomorrow. You have to try to send a message through the way you act. Especially our learners need to see you, do certain things. Don't close your eyes on, something. I'll give you a quick example. If I work at Toledo Hospital, for example. Just allow me to just give you this example. And this, there's a patient. Let's say this patient was, African American. A nurse is seeing that patient. The nurse is Caucasian. The nurse comes to the rest of us is saying that, hey, I think this patient will respond better to you. Telling a black nurse there. So do you want to switch this patient? If you're in my position, it's your job to step in and be like, no, that's not right. So I guess we all have to start doing some things on a very, very, very basic level. Yeah, we should all vote. We are all citizens, but I think the conversation really starts from within our community, how we live everyday lives. And I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you so much for your truth. And maybe that's one of the things we have to really look at as our students come back to the classroom. Are they seeing enough folks of color standing at the front of that classroom? And so the fact that you are still the one and only is concerning, but that story is probably familiar in other places as well. We're gonna wrap it up. We're right at 7, maybe just a minute past 7, and so we need to wrap up to keep with our time commitment. If there are any panelists that have a closing thought, a burner, but it's got to be a brief burner, if they want to throw it in there.
Dr. Flap asked me to throw out some coping strategies. When you're dealing with racial issues, try, to process your emotions, because it is an emotionally charged topic. Lean on your support system. If you have a support system, please try to lean on your support system and try not to make any decisions out of emotion. Try to do the right thing, try to follow all the rules. If you don't have a support system, try to find someone, at least one person that you can talk to, that you can lean on in a time of need, and reach out for help if you need it. The counseling center, 419-530-2426. Give us a call, but rely on your support group. Try not to make any decisions out of emotion. Try to do the right thing and reach out for someone when you need to.
Thank you so much, James. Any other panelists have a brief burner as we close?
I just throw out there, I would encourage us to make sure as we move forward that we continue to think about this. If you want to make impactful, effective change, it can't just be about having conversations. So this conversation is wonderful. The information, hopefully you got something, but now move the needle, change the narrative. Let's move, let's work. And the work starts within our own personal homes and outside of our homes. So let us remember that. We're going to have a great year. I know it seems really, really down, but we can have a great year. We can change a lot of these things, and time is now, because the fire is hot, right? The iron is hot. So we need to jump on it right now and make that change. I just wanted to say that, and I wish everyone well. Thank you for the opportunity to have a chance to speak with everyone tonight.
Thank you so much. All right, we certainly want to thank this outstanding panel for all of your comments. I think it was a great discussion. Wonderful job by the panel. Wonderful job by Dr. McKether and Dr. Flap putting this series together. We started off talking about Sister Erykah Badu and her question, brothers, y'all all right? And we saw through our discussion that everybody was not necessarily all right. But we're going to end with Brother Kendrick Lamar, who said, we're going to be all right. And we're going to be all right. We need to probably do this again, and we can talk about a lot more solutions. But the bottom line for brothers and for sisters is we're going to be all right. We're going to get through this. and we're going to come out greater on the other side. Stay persistent, stay protesting, stay voting, keep the pressure on, and we need our allies. I think that came out in a strong way as part of the conversation. Real allies. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. McKesson for any closing things he may have.
I know the time is late, but this was inspiring for me. And I think I realized two things: that I'm a bit traumatized, but I'm also energized. And so I just want to encourage folks on this call, on the panel, and everybody to think about what we can do collectively. I think I heard Brother Pryor say early on, we talk, we come together, but then we sort of disband. I want to just challenge us, think about what we can do collectively to help support one another and move the agenda that needs to be moved. And so that would be my challenge. And we just say lastly, you don't need permission to do good work. Do the good work and people will join in what you're doing. So that's my last word. And finally, our next event, Dialogues University, is going to be July 23rd in 2 weeks. And that topic is going to be effect of COVID-19 on Black and Brown communities. So please stay tuned for that as well.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you on the next diversity conversation that we have. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, David, for a great job, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Everybody stay safe.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.